Greetings, welcome to the Growth Educator Show. I'm your host, Mr. Winters. One of the things that I am blessed to be able to do is to teach 5th grade reading. One of the standards that I teach in 5th grade reading is RI 5.2, or for the state of Tennessee, it says 5 RI KID 2. And to break that code down, RI stands for Reading Informational, KID stands for Key Ideas and Details. And since it's a 2 at the end, it just means that it's the second standard for 5th grade. For our scholars in my school, that standard says determine the central idea of a text and explain how it is supported by key details and summarize the text. I believe that scholars may be challenged by this standard for a number of reasons, but I want to offer some solutions and just a little insight and a few strategies maybe to kind of help scholars excel with this standard, because it's important to understand not only what they have to know on this level, but also what they learned at what they were supposed to have learned the year before, and then also what they will be learning the years to come. So we will also look at a few documents such as the standards progression, as well as some other supplemental resources. But I want to pull out some keywords in the standard. The first keyword is to determine. Determine is an action word, so we'll say that's a word that the scholars will have to show. So scholars will have to determine. That means to conclude or ascertain after reasoning. I always give my scholars the street version. So to determine means to figure out by using key details. The next word we want to pull out is central idea. Central idea is also known as the main idea. That word is a noun, so that's something that they need to know. They need to know that the central idea is very similar, if not the same, as the main idea. And the main idea is simply what the text is mostly about. We'll talk about how to identify that later. The next word is to explain. Explain is another action word, so there's something that the scholars will have to show, something they will have to do. So in order to explain, scholars must be able to make something clear by describing it in details. The next key word is key details. That's a noun. That's something that they need to know. So key details are basically important words or phrases that you see throughout the text. And the last word is summarize. Summarize is an action word, so it's something that they will have to show. So when you summarize something, you're taking a longer part of the text or some longer information, and you're packing it down into a brief retelling only of the important parts. So one thing that I like to share is when you summarize something, you want to include the most important parts from the beginning, middle, and end. All right, so those were the keywords from the standard. Again, the standard is RI 5.2. So we'll be reading informational text this week and also helping them learn strategies on how to determine the main or determine the central idea and explain how they're supported by key details in the text and also summarize the text. A lot of times that part of the standard gets left out or neglected, but it's actually the key to mastering this standard. All right, so let's take it a step further. How can I find the main idea? Well, how can I find the central idea? I'm glad you asked. So when you read an informational text, by this point in your academic career, I'm sure that you know that there are some things the author or the writer will say explicitly, and other times he won't say it. And so most of the times he or she will not say the main thing they want you to take away. So you have to make an inference. I know my scholars are thoroughly advanced in making inferences, but that's not what we're going to talk about today. Not extensively anyway. You want to pay attention to the titles. You want to pay attention to pictures. You want to pay attention to words that could be repeated over and over again throughout the text. You also want to pay attention to anything that the author uses that's extra. So what I mean by that is basically text structure. What text structures are constantly used. So if I go back to the first thing, let's pay attention to the title. So informational text, those are texts basically about a specific topic. And so those titles will be connected to that topic. Not to confuse the topic with the main idea. Two totally different things. I'll explain that in a little bit. But the topic can be identified through the title and also pictures. So please make sure that anytime that you see those things on your text, use those to your advantage. When you see things like captions on your picture, those things help you understand what the picture is about as well. So we can use captions. You might not have a lot of those, but we can use them to our benefit to help us. So one of the things I have all scholars do, and I hope if you're watching this, that you are doing this as well, is we need to put a number beside each line in the text. That helps us go back to the text to provide evidence to support our answer, to support our reasoning. So as you read the text, in order to figure out what the main idea is, a lot of times it will be stated in that text, usually at the beginning. Sometimes it could be stated toward the end of it, but we'll see some examples of that later. All right, so I think that we're ready to look at a few passages. We're ready to look at a few examples to try this thing out. So I just basically wanted to share what the standard says and some key points to take away. I also want to share one more thing with you. What are some questions that you could ask as a scholar, as a student, to help guide your thinking as you're reading these stories? What are some questions that you can ask yourself as you're reading the story to point you in a direction? Which part of this text will lead me to figure out what it's mostly about? What part of the text will help me understand these are details that will support this main idea? So hopefully this helps. Hopefully this is the beginning. I think that we are going to go ahead and read a text and do a little guided practice. We'll do it together this time. But next time, after a few tries, it's going to be on you. All right, thank you for tuning in today. Again, I am your host, Mr. Winters, also known as the Growth Educator. Be great. Remember these three things: I can, I will, I am. Peace.